I was ankle-deep in a cold marsh when the bear cub lifted both paws and set them in my hands like a child asking to be pulled from a pool. For a second, I forgot every warning sign in the park brochure. The cub looked at me with wet lashes pasted to his face, mud stringing from his fur. He did not growl. He just held on. I told myself to breathe and not make any sudden moves. My name is Madison Cole. I teach first graders and walk the service road after church when the weather is kind. That afternoon, the pine forest hummed with insects and the ground sucked at my boots. I had heard a thin cry, not quite a dog, not quite a bird, and stepped off the road toward a strip of dark water that settled between the trees after spring floods. The grass hid the puddles until you were in them. When I saw the cub, he was chest deep, stuck where muck turns to glue. I said aloud to steady myself, "Madison, do not be reckless. Look for the mother." I turned in a slow circle, scanning the trunks and the breaks of light. No sound from the woods, no crack of a branch, no huff. I kept my voice low. "Easy, buddy. We are going to get you out." The cub clung harder. I moved behind him, slid my hands under his front legs, and eased his body onto a patch of wiry grass. He was heavier than he looked, but still small enough that I could lift him without straining my back. As I pulled, he let out a sharp squeal and jerked. That is when I saw it. Under the wet fur around his shoulder, a thin loop of wire had bitten into the skin. The coat parted like reeds and showed a ring of raw flesh. The smell hit me, metal and infection. A wire snare. I froze with my hands on him, the sound of my pulse filling my ears. A voice came from the road behind me. "Madison, step back." It was my neighbor, Earl Whitman, who liked to hunt deer in season and lecture everyone else out of it. He stood with his palms up. "You do not want a mama bear to find you touching her kid." I said I did not see a mother. I pointed to the wire. He squinted, shook his head once, and said the sentence I knew would come. "It is nature. Sometimes you have to let nature be." I answered without thinking. "A wire loop is not nature, Earl." He looked at the sky like he was appealing to a judge only he could see. Then he said he would get a jacket from his truck and maybe we could lift the cub together and set him on the bank. He added that after that we should leave. I told him I was calling the ranger. He rolled his eyes but did not argue. The signal by the marsh was a rumor at best, so I slogged back to the service road until my phone found a thin slice of bars. I called the number printed on the trailhead sign. Ranger Tom Willis picked up with the kind of calm that makes you feel you are in good hands. I told him where we were and what I was looking at. He said 3 things. Do not try to remove the wire. Keep distance once the cub is safe on land. I am on my way. By the time I returned, Earl had wrapped an old quilt around the cub and slid him farther from the waterline. The cub whined and nipped at the air but did not bite. I held his head steady while Earl spoke like he would to a nervous dog. "Easy there, champ. We are not the bad guys." Tom pulled up on the gravel shoulder in a dusty county truck. He wore plain canvas and a brimmed hat, and he made eye contact with me first, not with Earl, not with the cub. He thanked us for staying and crouched without hurry. He put on gloves, then used a blunt tool to wedge a little space between wire and skin. "Do not cut," he said to himself as much as to us. "If we cut now, the muscle will spring and the wire may retract deeper. We stabilize, then vet care." Tom slid a rigid board from the truck bed, the kind they used to move deer off the road. He and Earl lifted the cub onto it and strapped him gently. Tom said to me, "Madison, you can ride behind us if you want, but do not follow too close." I nodded and climbed into my car with hands that would not stop shaking. At the rehab center, a low building tucked behind the fairgrounds, Dr. Rachel Nguyen met us at the loading bay. She was short, fast, and precise. She did not waste a word. She checked the cub's breathing, took his temperature, and said in 4-line. She said he was dehydrated and stressed, but young and strong. Then she leaned close to the wound. Rachel said softly that this was a classic snare. Illegal, cheap, cruel. She numbed the area, cleaned away the grime, and threaded the wire forward so she could cut it without tearing more tissue. When the loop came free, the skin welled with blood, then the bleeding eased under gauze. She measured the wound with a little paper ruler and glanced at me. "You did right not to pull." I swallowed hard and nodded. Tom asked about the mother. Rachel said the cub was the size of a toddler, still nursing or at least shadowing the sow for food lessons. If the mother was nearby, they had a chance to reunite them. If not, They would raise him with minimal human contact and release him later with all the wild behaviors preserved as best they could. She spoke this last part like a promise to herself. Earl stood in the doorway, hat in his hands, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. He said he knew folks who set those loops for coyotes and raccoons, and that sometimes things go wrong. Rachel did not look up. She said things go wrong for animals that do not deserve it, and for people who run into them on family trails. Tom said he would open a case and sweep the area that evening. I drove home at dusk with the windows down and the radio off. My palms still felt the small weight of the cub's paws. At the last curve before the neighborhood, I pulled over and cried, the kind that sounds like a cough. When I could breathe again, I called Tom and asked if they needed help the next day. He said yes. We met at first light. Tom loaded trail cameras and flagging tape into the truck. He said we would look for sign of a sow in the direction opposite the road, where the marsh drains under the timber line. He briefed me in that steady way of his. If we see a bear, we get small and quiet. Do not run. Speak low so she knows we are people. Give space. He repeated that we would not bring the cub close unless we had clear proof she was still tending the area. We found tracks before mid-morning. Tom knelt with one palm beside the print. Adult female, he said, not huge. The edges were sharp, which meant hours, not days. A little farther on we found broken fern, scat with berry skins, and a tree with a fresh rub. Tom set cameras and a speaker. He explained that at night they would play short whimpers at long intervals, nothing frantic, just enough to pull attention if the sow was listening. We left scent-neutral cloth near the cameras and pulled back. That evening Rachel called. The cub had eaten, which was good. She had given him antibiotics and a pain shot. She said he dozed with his paws folded the way some cubs do when they are trying to feel safe. I pictured that and had to sit down. Over the next days the cameras picked up a silhouette now and then, a wide-shouldered shape ghosting the edge of the clearing. Once, a nose lifted into the frame and huffed, then slipped away. Tom slowed the speaker schedule so the sow would not be drawn into daylight or near people. On the fifth night we had what we needed. The sow came in, paced, and chuffed, the sound mothers use when they call their young to follow. We set the reunion for the following evening at the same clearing, at the hour when birds go quiet but the sky is not black yet. Rachel loaded the cub into a covered carrier so he would not fix eyes on any of us. She worked quickly, her face calm. Tom spread the plan with simple sentences I could remember even with my heart hammering. We place the carrier on the edge. We back away past the truck. We wait. If the sow does not arrive, we leave and try again tomorrow. No heroics. Earl showed up uninvited, hands stuffed in his pockets. He said he wanted to see it through. Tom glanced at me. I shrugged. Sometimes people need to witness the consequence of what they defend. We set the carrier under a pine where the ground rose just enough to stay dry. The cub breathed in a soft rhythm. Tom clicked the door so it would lift at a pull of a cord from the truck. Then we retreated. The clearing simmered with mosquitoes. Somewhere a whip-poor-will started and stopped. I heard her before I saw her. A low push of air, a pause, another. She stepped from the trees like a shadow firming into shape. She was not large as bears go, but she carried a kind of authority that made the hair on my arms lift. She sniffed the air, swung her head, and made a short noise like a cough. The cub answered with a trilling whine that seemed to come from his whole body. Tom pulled the cord. The door lifted. The cub hesitated for one long second and then shuffled out, stiff from the bandage but steady. He made 3 steps, stopped, and looked back at us. I did not breathe. The sow closed the distance in a few strides, pressed her nose to his neck, and made the gentle pop that means follow. He leaned into her shoulder like a child pressing into a mother's coat. Then they moved as one into the timber and vanished with almost no sound. I did not realize I had been holding Earl's sleeve until the cloth slipped from my fingers. He cleared his throat. I was wrong, he said, and there was no bluster in it. Tom nodded once and did not make him say more. Over the next week, Tom's team swept the trails and found more wires than I want to count. Each loop went into a bin in the truck bed. He put up signs with the hotline number in plain black letters and spoke to the local fishing club about what those loops do to paws and legs, and sometimes to small children who wander off the path. Rachel sent a photo of the cub's shoulder closing up pink and clean. I told the story to my class without showing the worst parts. I showed them how to point 2 fingers to their eyes and then to the Ranger logo when they see trouble. I told them that help is not a feeling. It is a set of steps you can practice until your hands know them as well as your head. They listen the way children do when truth is simple. A week later, I walked the same road at the same hour. The marsh still smelled of peat and green things. On the far bank, a small print set beside a larger one showed in the mud for a moment before groundwater filled it. I stood and watched until the water smoothed the edges. Then I pressed my palms together the way the cub had done on that first day, not as a prayer exactly, just as a quiet thanks for how a life can be lifted when two hands meet in the middle of a hard place.